So now let's have a look at physiology. Remember, we're talking here about how we influence, how we generate a congruency, a message verbally that is matched with our body language. Now, we did say that specifically in liking, it's about facial expressions, and there'll be some training specifically on that later. But for this section, we're going to look at how we convey messages using our physiology. Simple techniques that we can use when we're in a sales environment. These movements are based on a family therapist called Virginia Satir. She was involved in a lot of the early work research-wise for NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. She identified 5 universally recognised movements or gestures that convey meaning. So when we want to say something and have that sense of non-ambiguity, absolute clarity, these are some things that we can consider. The 5 are, first, the leveller, and I'll take you through that. Then there's the blamer, then the placater, then the computer, and then there's finally use of space. Now, it's not specifically a Satir category, but it comes out of one referred to as the Jester. So let's go straight back to the leveller. If I was to say to anyone here, that, palms across in this movement, that generally means no. End of discussion. I'm not going to talk about it anymore. And clearly in a sales environment, it's a dangerous manoeuvre if I was to do this. However, I might be talking to you, you might make a request of me, and I could simply say, I don't think I'm going to have any movement on that. That'll be a difficult one for me. That is far easier, and I'll show you how you might integrate it into a presentation a little bit later. If we look at the blamer, if I was to stand here talking to you, and as I do, I'm pointing directly at you, there's no doubt that this is about you and what you've got to do. Politicians use this brilliantly. They'll use language like, we need to tighten our belts, we need to be more careful, we must be more vigilant. And what they're really saying is, you need to be more vigilant, you need to be more careful, you need to tighten your belt. Tony Blair was a master of this, of using his hand to convey a message to us on the receiving end. The next one I'll talk about is the placater. This is where I do this. It's not my fault. Don't blame me. Literally. It's a very, very clever way of deflecting. When someone asks you, say, well, I'd love to do that, but I'm just not in a position to. Can't do that, don't blame me, move on. The next one is referred to as the computer. If you get people who interrupt a lot, the best thing to do is to stand there with a hand on a chin. We've all seen Rodin's thinker. I stand there and I'm thinking. This is very much me conveying to you, I'm listening, I know about this sort of stuff. Yeah, interesting. I'm an expert in this too. It's a great way of letting someone tell you how clever they are or interrupt you. They simply do this, nod, agree, and then move on. Particularly useful in bigger presentations where someone wants to interrupt you, and all you need to do as they interrupt is look at them, nod, and say a really interesting point. We're not going to have an opportunity to talk about that right now, don't blame me, because we just haven't got the time. End of discussion. But what I would suggest is if we could just hold off till the end of the presentation, I'll deal with that separately. Essentially what I'm saying is when I'm being interrupted, I know about this sort of stuff. It's not my fault, but we're not going to talk about it in this presentation. I'll talk to you a little bit later about it. It's a subtle way of getting messages across. The final one is if I want to move, if I shift my position, that if I'm talking to you normally about anything, whether it's a sales presentation, a stage presentation, but I'm talking to you about a topic, and I want to emphasise some points. I can use space. If you've ever been to the theatre, actors sometimes engage with the audience directly. They'll talk to the audience. When they do, they will very often move to a specific spot on the stage. The aim is to convey to the audience, when I'm here, this is when I'm talking to you. When I'm back on the stage, that's when I'm talking to the rest of the cast. So it's separating, so it's use of space. In a sales presentation or on a stage, if I wanted to emphasise something to you now, I might choose to use my voice differently, which, if you remember, was drop the tone, deepen your voice slightly, slow down slightly, go slightly louder to convey authority. But if I equally do that as I move my body forward, so I occupy a separate space. when I've emphasised my point, I might step back and carry on with my normal communication. Now, I've seen people do this in sales interactions in one-on-ones. All they'll do is to use a detail aid, a computer screen to emphasise a point. They'll be talking to a customer normally, and then they'll lean forward to the detail aid, direct the person to the aid, slow the voice down, deepen, go slightly louder, and simply say the key points here are here, here, and here. They utilise this space to reinforce a key message. It draws the customer in. Successful salespeople do use detail aids. The majority of people say, I don't like using them, my customers don't like them. The truth is, if the presentation becomes a detail aid, you're right. But if you use it to create space and importance, it's phenomenally powerful. So if we combine some of this stuff, I have actually watched a sales director do this brilliantly. We've all been there with sales figures are put up on a screen and we all gasped with our jaws open. And what happened was that's the reaction he got. He stepped forward and he said, I get that these are tough targets. There's no way we're going to get anything to change here. But what could we all do to get as close to these targets as possible? Now that sounded really conciliatory and nice. What was being conveyed in terms of the Satir categories was, it's not my fault. Shut up arguing about it. What are you going to do about it? It was a brilliant way of giving a message, but giving an underlying message using our physiology. Trust me, this can be done in very, very small interactions, one-on-ones. You just have to understand what message you want to get across. Think of a great actor, any actor or actress that you really admire. When you watch them, what is it that you believe in? Because I've seen actors, two different actors in the same role. One you'd say, fabulous. The other you'd say, all right, at best. The truth is they learn the script, the words. They then bring it to life with their voices, but then they act it. They bring it to life with their bodies as well. And that is what great salespeople do. They engage their customers.